Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kate Remillard. I'm on the marketing team at VHT Studios, and I will be your co-host today for Lunch with Lucy. So thanks for joining us. We have a very special guest with us today. Just need to do a couple of announcements before we get started. As you can see, everybody is muted. So if you have questions for our guests, just add them to the Q&A box on your screen. We'll take those during the course of the show, and then also at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. Also, at the very end of the show, we will announce the 5 winners of our DoorDash gift cards, so stick around to the end so that you qualify for that. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe Lucy's YouTube channel. She has tons of great content. Our whole archive of Lunch with Lucy's over the last 2 years, plus her interviews, all with industry experts. They're fantastic. So check out her YouTube page. And I think that's all I have for announcement. So I'll go ahead and introduce Lucy herself.
Well, thank you, Kate. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And just really happy to see all of you always working on great content and interesting, something new and fun for you to learn and to find out. And today we have a great guest, Misha Haghani. Misha is he is with Paramount Realty USA, but it's an auction house as well. So it's a completely different concept. And we will talk about that today. So Misha, just a few words about how did you land in such unique position that you decided to open an auction house?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Lucy and Kate. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks everyone for tuning in. I learned about the auction business through an internship in college. So I went to NYU Stern School of Business and started in 1997. And in my first semester, I came across through a friend this real estate auction company, and I ended up working for this auction company for about 3 years while I was at NYU. That's how I learned about the business and inevitably came back to it down the line.
Well, that's fantastic, and it's flourishing as we speak. So my first question to you, auction house, we all have this misconception what auction house looks like. You know, I raise my hand, I put my bid, but it's completely different. So let's talk about the basics of auction house in real estate.
Sure. I mean, look, for centuries, the great auction houses have been using auctions to sell art, jewelry, antiques, collectibles. In more recent years, we've seen automobile auctions and auctions for other asset classes really grow with popularity. And I would credit the internet to much of that, frankly. But basically all an auction is a format to determine who's the highest bidder and what's the highest price. That's fundamentally what an auction is. And there are different styles of auctions, and most people hear auction and they think of raising your hand and bidding and starting low and going high. And that is the most common format of auction. You know, fundamentally, price-wise, you arrive at the winning bid price in an auction by starting low and going high, as opposed to in traditional real estate where you start with a high asking price. You know, if it's worth 3 million and you're asking 3.5 million, buyers come in and offer less, and then they kind of go back and forth, as all of you know, till you reach that market price. In an auction for the same property with a market price of X, we start the bidding below X and work our way up to this price. So that's a very general answer to your question. I'm sure you'll have more specific ones for me.
Exactly. Before we get into specific questions, well, let's see what the results are from our poll. Oh, that's interesting. That is great. So we do have, 26% of our audience who are participated in the auction. Is it, we didn't really ask this specifically, did you participate in real estate auction house or just auction house in general? But that's okay. You could just put something in the chat. Mm-hmm. So the question that everyone is asking, especially since majority of our clientele and our audience are realtors, how does it affect a realtor and an agent? So are you taking the business away from them? Are you working together with them if the house has to go to an auction?
So Different auction companies do things differently. The way that we've adjusted our model has been essentially to create a win-win-win for the seller, the listing agent, and the auction house and the buyers that are involved. We used to replace the listing broker. We used to compete with the listing broker for the business. But we learned after some time that, and I'm doing this, 20 years total, but the last 17 years full time, really the listing broker is the key to the marketplace. The listing broker is on the ground, in the trenches, with the relationships. The listing broker is key. So we adjusted our model so that the listing broker would only have to gain by partnering with us. So in terms of mechanics, assume a listing broker has a listing. If that seller chooses to proceed with an auction, number one, the listing broker's listing agreement stays in place completely as is, no change. So whatever the terms of that agreement are, they stay in place. Whatever the fee structure is, stays in place. Number two, the seller engages Paramount to implement the auction program. That agreement effectively treats us as a co-exclusive and authorizes us to charge the buyer a buyer's premium, which is what's standard in the auction business. Buyers pay an additional surcharge on top of their bid price. So that's where we get paid. And thirdly, we collaborate with the listing broker in order to implement our auction process. The most important thing I have to say to those brokers that are listening now, that are typically on the sell side, the listing brokers, our programs are designed to help you listing brokers make it more likely that your listings sell, make it more likely that those listings sell faster, and make it more likely that the deal sells direct, so you're keeping both sides of the commission. So we have closed, and I'm just going to give you data because that's better than words. We have closed somewhere between 750 and 800 transactions since inception. Out of those 750 to 800 transactions, over 75% of them had no buyer broker. Compare that to what happens traditionally in the marketplace. I would say it's the inverse. Perhaps 80% of deals are co-broked. So by partnering with us, you're making it much more likely that you're actually selling direct and keeping both sides of the commission. Those are our primary value adds for the listing broker.
What about the process? So the process itself. So the house is on the market. There are maybe several of them in the same area. They are plus minus the same. Why would someone go with an auction house versus with traditional way of selling the property and let the agent find a buyer's agent?
Sure. So I just mentioned the benefits to the listing broker, but now you're asking, why would a seller choose auction? Okay. The answer is that there are a bunch of answers. First and foremost, some sellers just like auctions for any number of reasons. They may have experience with auctions when it comes to art or jewelry or antiques or automobiles or some other asset class, equipment, machinery. They may have experience with auctions that's positive. And frankly, our number one source of business is when brokers call us, listing brokers call us and say, my client, the seller, is interested in selling through auction. I'm calling you to find out how it works. So the point there is that this is usually seller driven. It's usually the seller that says, I want to sell by auction. And then they tell their broker, and then the broker calls us. That's the most common path or pipeline channel for us. Now, as for your question, what are the benefits for the seller? For the seller, you're getting more marketing because you have your listing broker, hopefully a good listing broker at a good firm, doing all the right things. But then you layer on top of that Paramount's more aggressive and non-traditional auction marketing process. So you're getting more marketing. More marketing gives you more exposure, more eyeballs, which gives you more traffic online, more traffic through the property. That creates more activity and more offers. And this is really, really important for the listing brokers here who are trying to get their clients to be realistic. That is an incredibly important path to making your seller realistic about market price, because our position with the with respect to the seller is, look, you have a good broker from a good firm, and you've got Paramount running an auction process. We're both running our processes simultaneously. You're getting more marketing, more exposure than any traditional listing gets. At the end of the day, the highest bid is X. Whether or not you like it, that's market price. And if it's above the reserve, they sell it. If it's not above the reserve, it's their option to sell or not to sell. But all of this is to say the following. The biggest benefit for the seller in running an auction is to be confident that they have left no stone unturned, right? They've exhausted every channel and every method to market their property and maximize value.
And they probably hope for the bidding war. So that's the goal, is to have a bidding war.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're hoping for a bidding war. They're hoping to, maximize value quickly and sell by auction.
Yeah. So, and the process itself, like when you and I had a conversation, and as a matter of fact, we had a great interview with Misha. So if you go to my YouTube channel, please go to Get Real with Lucy. It's youtube.com/LucyEdwardsHT, and you will have the whole big fun interview with a lot of details. And one of the conversations you and I had, you price the house, or you recommend to price the house slightly lower than the rest of the area with more or less equal amenities. And it just brings more attention to the property, and you have this excitement around your listing.
That's true. As I said earlier, in an auction, you start below market price and you go up. Normally in an auction. There are other auctions. There are reverse auctions where you start high and go low. But as you know, with a traditional listing, the listing price is usually more than market value. Buyers offer less, and then you go back and forth until you meet in the middle. With an auction, it's the opposite. This is still market price. We start the bidding below and go up to market price. That's a huge part of the reason why auctions are effective. Let's present this from the buyer's perspective. When a buyer sees our marketing materials, whatever they may be, whether it's social media or email blasts or our website or even Zillow, StreetEasy, Truly, or whatever, the aggregators, whatever they're seeing, our brochures, etc., pretty much all of our marketing is set up in a particular way such that the first message is usually the word auction. Either auction or luxury auction or private auction, we may tweak as necessary, but auction, that in and of itself is compelling, which is such an important part of our business model, to be compelling to engage buyers. So the first message is auction. Immediately under the word auction is always the date. So today's February 8th. You may see an upcoming auction of ours, auction March 15th, previously 10 million, opening bid 6 million. So there's three messages there. The word auction, which is going to get people's attention. The date, which sets a deadline and creates additional urgency or enhances the urgency created by the word auction. And number three, a pricing contrast. Typically, we provide the highest initial or prior asking price versus the new starting bid or opening bid or minimum bid, depending upon the style of the auction. And those three messages are enough to get people's attention so that they say, oh my God, what's going on here? And then they engage and they call us or they call a listing broker. Typically they go on the website, they get the information, they get the details, and they learn how to participate. So that's the first part of this that's meant to be compelling, get people's attention and get them engaged.
And the marketing is very important as well. And like you said, you are preparing way in advance and you are attacking every avenue, the social media, the newsletters. You also have print material and you have great photography and better port and everything possible to attract not just someone from the area, but from everywhere, from actual nationwide and worldwide.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, look, you want to be as broad as possible with your marketing. Obviously, to an extent, you're not going to market a $300,000 home across the country because it's not likely
But you
that,
hardly have those, Misha,
but
so.
yeah, but yeah, that's true. I mean, most of our business is luxury and commercial. So it's less of that than it is of what I just said. But yeah, the point, like I said earlier, is to engage in as much marketing and implement as many marketing channels as possible to maximize value. You want to do digital listings. We have our own subscriber list. We have 70,000 subscribers that get our weekly newsletters. By the way, if anyone wants to be added to our weekly email list, visit our website, prusa.com. That's PR as in Paramount Realty, USA.com. And then you can add your email to the bottom of the website and you'll be added to our email list. Kate, if you don't mind dropping that into the chat, you already did it. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, I love your newsletter. It's very detailed and it has great visual material. So yes, I think it's a really good marketing piece there by itself.
Yeah, it is. I see some questions. Can I jump in and
Sure,
answer some of these questions
Yeah.
I'm seeing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going to go backwards from bottom up. So Cheryl, I thought auctions were bank-owned homes for a seller who went into foreclosure. Great question. So I will tell you, Cheryl, you and the other, I think we have a few hundred people here, from 1997 until around 2017, most of my conversations and most of our interactions with prospective clients included what you just asked, is auction of real estate related to some sort of distressed thing, like a foreclosure or something like that. And the reason for that, I'm an attorney as well, by the way, but the reason for that is because the way that the foreclosure laws in this country are set up, and they're really different state by state, but the way that they're set up is such that a bank or a lender takes back the collateral that is the subject of the loan, which is the home, typically, by auction. So most people, when they hear auction, or historically, they have associated those auctions with some kind of distressed context. But that's not the case, particularly the last 10 years. There are more and more private auction companies like ours, although we are the best, obviously. There are more and more private auction companies that are handling non-distressed auctions. Lisiana, I see your comment. Our website is prusa.com. Look up 2 comments. You'll see Kate's note to you. Most of our auctions are private, non-distressed, healthy owners that prefer a different marketing approach. The last 4, 5, 6 years, people don't even ask anymore if auctions are some sort of negative thing. They used to ask it all the time, more than 90% of the time. Now it's unbelievable. More than 90% of the time, they don't ask that. So that's one of the questions I see. KG, yes, you can list on MLS and do an auction simultaneously. The answer is yes. Mary, yes, we do commercial. We've auctioned, let me give the 1-minute overview on the firm. We have represented many types of owners and sold many types of real estate, all by auction. So types of owners, we have represented homeowners, private equity funds, developers, high net worth individuals, family offices, couple of lenders, government agencies. We've held some pretty significant government contracts, which are rare, but we have. Investment groups. And we've auctioned luxury residential, non-luxury residential. We've sold hundreds of homes worth, for less than 1 million. And we've done, plenty above that, obviously. Commercial, land, industrial, development sites, income producing. I think the only asset class, we've sold retail. The only asset class that I could think of that we haven't auctioned, I think, is hotel. I don't believe we've auctioned hotel yet, but you can auction any type of real estate. You can auction anything. I could auction my phone. I could auction whatever. Lucy.
Yeah, and that's great. And then we have a very interesting question here. Okay, so we have listing. It's on various MLS services and no offers or low offers. Well, first of all, Peter, it's Peter Elani. If you can put in the chat what the price of the property is. So majority of your listings are high-end luxury listings, right? And just because I guess, you know, if you would like to have that anxiety and if you want to invest that much effort in marketing, it has to worth it. It has to worth your while, and therefore it's $450,000. So would you auction a $450,000 property, Misha?
We would, but we're more likely to do that if it's going to lead to some sort of volume. You know, on a one-off basis, exactly like you just said, it's less likely that we're going to be doing a deal of that size for exactly why you said so.
And what about today's environment where there is lack of inventory and it looks like everything is getting sold anyway? And obviously, and you were talking about it from the very beginning, you are bringing value to the property, you are getting better price, you're getting great commission for the realtor. So all the way around, it's a win-win-win situation. But still, with what would you say the positives are to put the house on auction, let's say luxury, beautiful house with lack of inventory, when in that price range, you can still sell it without an auction?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
And the question is, like, with lack of inventory, why would someone come to the auction house to sell the property when they can sell it anyway? Because there is nothing on the market.
Okay. So you certainly don't have to sell through auction. You can sell through auction. Obviously, it's an option. Again, this is all driven by the seller. If the seller is looking to engage in a more aggressive marketing campaign, an auction is a good idea. If the seller is unhappy with activity level, if the seller isn't getting enough action, enough offers, high enough offers, and wants more, an auction is a good strategy to explore. If the listing has become stale, days on market is high, an auction is a good strategy to explore. You don't need to auction anything. If you price it right, it will sell. If it's worth 1 million and you're asking 1.5, you're not likely to get as many inquiries as you are if you price it at 1.1. That's no one needs to hear me say that. That's, you know, obvious. If you price it right, it will sell fast. I would love to ask a question. I would love to add this as a poll question from the people from the agents who are listening now. And Kate, I sent you an email. When you get a chance, please take a look at that. We believe firmly that the number one challenge or obstruction in getting more deals closed is the unrealistic seller. That is the number one problem, because there's always a buyer for everything at the right price. And that's really just the definition of market price. If it's worth $10 million, and you're asking $18 million, no one's going to call you. And you're not going to sell it if the seller wants 18 million and it's worth 10 million, or if it's worth 300,000 and the seller's looking for 365. It's not going to sell 20% above market price. But if the seller is realistic, the property will sell. So therefore, the biggest challenge is, how do you make a seller understand market value? And you all know that struggle. Brokers, especially the listing brokers, but even the buyer brokers who represent a purchaser who's offering what the buyer's broker firmly believes is market price for a home. Even the listing broker sometimes believe it. So the buyer offers $1 million. The buyer's broker believes that $1 million is a fair price and reflective of market value. The listing broker might even agree that the $1 million offer is fair and reflective of market price. But maybe the seller says, nope, it's worth 1.15 or 1.2. or 1.1, whatever, just more. And the seller doesn't accept that offer or that bid. How do you get the seller to be realistic? This auction process is a phenomenal way of doing that, demonstrating to that seller what market price is. And then there is a question here, what about another listing, 829,000?
I personally think it would depend, like if you have 829 in Greenwich, Connecticut, and then you have 829,000 somewhere in, I don't know, like in East Brunswick, they're two different values. So I personally would think it depends where the property is and whether it's considered to be luxury at 829. What do you think, Misha?
We agree, and we're now really a national auction company. We've closed what I said, 750, 800 transactions. The vast majority of those have been in the Metro New York marketplace. But over the last 4 or 5 years, we've auctioned property in Miami, in Philadelphia. We just closed a $9.26 million home in suburb of Philadelphia. We closed a penthouse in Miami, property in Chicago. We had the highest sale price of the year in the state of New Mexico for a significant property. We're today handling a very high-end assignment in Bel Air, Los Angeles. It's 260 acres in Bel Air, which is crazy. They were asking 125 million and then chopped to 100 and then 75 and then 60. And we're now at a minimum bid of $39 million, which is significantly less than the original price, which was 10 years ago in 2013. But we will handle assignments anywhere. But the closer to New York, the more likely we are to go to a lower price point. The more relevant our proprietary email list of 70,000 is to that assignment, the more likely we are to handle a lower priced assignment. Our 70,000 is high net worth individuals, end users, private equity professionals, partners at law firms, 20 to 25,000 brokers, contractors, and many other investors. And I would say at least 2/3, 70% of that list is from the Metro New York marketplace. So if your buyer demographic for a property is from this marketplace that I just described, then I think we're a much better fit on the lower end. Above 5 million, we'll do anywhere in the country.
And there is a question also, Misha, at what price point do you see the reserve clause becoming effective in our area? It's usually on the higher end calls. That is from Ron Timbrook.
I see Ron's question. Ron may be asking two sort of separate questions. I'm going to start to answer, and Ron, if you want to clarify, please jump in and clarify the question. If you're asking how we set the reserve, it depends on the style of the auction. Okay, we have online auctions, we have in-person auctions, and we have sealed bid auctions. 3 different auction formats. Online and in-person auctions are more similar. These are what we call open auctions, transparent bidding processes where everyone sees everyone's bids. A sealed bid auction is different and appropriate for a different type of property or context, but it's not an open auction where everyone sees everyone's bids. Everyone submits their offers in writing by the bid deadline, okay? If it's an open auction, which is an online or an in-person auction, then we want that reserve price to be set 15, 20, 25, 30% below market value. And ideally, we disclose that, okay? If the seller is not willing to set a reserve price that much below market, but they're willing to set a reserve price that's close to market value, such that we think it's realistic, we will accept the assignment. But instead of publishing the reserve price, we will instead publish a suggested opening bid, which is where bidding begins, but it's not binding on the seller. I know it's a lot of information, but that's that. If it's a sealed bid auction, we are more comfortable to publish a reserve price that's closer to the market price or even at market price. The reason why is because in a sealed bid auction, a bidder could bid whatever they want, even less than the reserve price. So if it's worth 500,000 and the last asking price was 699, but it's worth 500 and the seller is about to reduce the price to 560, 550, instead of chopping the asking price and lowering the ceiling, because an asking price is usually a ceiling, instead you go to auction and start set a lower minimum bid price. So we would take that assignment perhaps and put a minimum bid of 5.25, under the theory that even if we don't get 5.25, a bidder may still bid 500 because it's in writing, and they could submit that number in writing, and the seller has the option to take it or not take it. Ron, I hope we answered your question. I gave you a bunch of information there.
Open online and then or in-person option. That's what Ron just said. And open online and
I think we answered the question.
Yeah, I think you answered it. Yeah, I think you did. I have another question. What is your seller's premium, or just the buyer pays it, and how much is it?
So we only get paid one time. Some auction houses collect the buyer's premium and the seller's premium, or a seller commission. You can call it either thing. We only charge one buyer premium. So if the bidder bids $1 million and the buyer's premium, I'm just going to make up 5%, the buyer's going to pay $1 million plus 5%, which is $1,050,000, and then we collect our commission from that $1,050,000.
Mm-hmm.
Our premiums have ranged. The average is really in the 3 to 6% range.
Okay.
We've done higher. We did one deal at 2%, but that was a $40 million assignment. So we prefer not to go so low.
No, absolutely. So basically there is a 5 or whatever percent to the agent, because that is their commission, and then you have your own commission from the buyer, which is between 3 and 6%.
So let's say the listing broker has a listing agreement in place for 5%, and it's a 50-50 co-broke, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Once the property sells, the listing broker either keeps the full 5 on a direct deal or splits 50-50 if it's a co-broke.
Mm-hmm.
All of that stays the same. There's no change for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Footnote for the listing brokers who are listening, as I said earlier, over 75% of our transactions have no buyer broker. So you're more likely to sell direct and make a double commission or make both sides of the fee.
Mm-hmm.
That's all on the broker side. On the auction side, the buyer pays a buyer's premium, and it varies for each auction, but it's usually 3 to 6%, and that's our fee. That's it. Simple.
Simple,
and
easy.
Our competitors, and I should note that, our competitors, especially, there are a couple who are, let's say, significant like our firm, they're typically charging much higher buyer's premiums, like 10 or 12%.
Ooh.
And we think that size premium is simply too much, because if you're selling a property and asking a buyer to add 10% to their bid, that's just significant. And it's much, much, much more likely that the buyer begins to factor that buyer's premium into their bid, which ends up generating a net sale price that is no different than it would have been otherwise. But actually, one of the benefits of charging a buyer's premium is that it helps generate additional proceeds of sale for the seller. I'll elaborate quickly. We don't have to charge a buyer's premium. Let's say 4 or 5 of our auctions out of 800 of them, the seller said, no buyer's premium. I don't want you charging a buyer's premium. I'll just pay you a commission myself. It's not common, but the theory there, that what they're thinking is, if you ask a buyer to pay a premium, then they have to pay more money, and then they don't want to pay more money. I would rather just pay you a commission for bringing the buyer. We disagree with that, although we'll comply if that's the way the seller wants it, because obviously we need to be compensated one way or the other way. And if the seller wants to do it this way, we could do it this way. But the reason to do it through a buyer's premium is because sometimes you do find bidders who don't factor it into their bid price. And so you end up with additional proceeds of sale.
No, that's very clear. And we have a really great question. How do you guarantee that a property is clear of violations and other impediments?
And other impediments. Anna, so that's a good question. Look, the auction is the format. I said this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The auction is a mechanism to determine what the highest bid price is and who the highest bidder is, okay? The rest of the transaction is handled pretty much like a typical transaction. So if there are violations or impediments, they're still there, whether it's a traditional sale or an auction sale. We simply use our auction platform to reach lots of buyers, to create urgency, and to get them to engage, and then to generate the highest price on the fastest timeline from the highest bidder. But they're bidding on the property usually as is. Now, in a sealed bid auction, a bidder could say, I will offer X, or I offer X, $1 million. I'll close in 60 days. I need a mortgage contingency for 20% or 70% or whatever they want to offer. And on the condition that, and then they can offer whatever contingencies they want. You have to address these 2 out of your 5 violations.
And
whatever.
And I remember when we were talking about the process, and if someone wants to bring their own appraiser or inspector, they can do that. So they can actually visit the property at their convenience, or when when everything is agreed upon, and they bring their people to evaluate the property and let the buyer know what other investments that they have to make in the future. So that is available.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Buyers, I love the Cy Sims quote, an educated consumer is our best customer. So to that end, we like buyers who know what they're bidding on. So we provide access to the property through tours before the auction so bidders can view. They can bring their experts, appraisers, if they want, engineers, whatever, architects, design professionals, whatever they want to bring, whoever they want to bring, they can bring. And number 3, we provide substantive due diligence information to bidders in advance of the auction, which they can access virtually from our website so that they see everything that we have been able to collect in advance of the auction, and that they understand, they know what they're bidding on, what the status of title is, what the terms of sale set forth in the contract are, whatever it is. We want buyers to know that so that they are informed and they're putting their best foot forward. And just quickly, the reason why, any information you don't give to a buyer is an uncertainty which will inevitably yield a discount from that buyer. And we don't want discounts. We want to maximize value for our sellers.
What about open houses? Are you conducting open houses? Does the listing agent conduct open houses prior to the auction going live in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, from a buyer's perspective, when they learn about the auction, and you can see this on our website, every auction has a how to participate section, all of which have 3 or 4 steps. Step 1, download the brochure. Step 2, access the due diligence virtually. So they can click, access our due diligence folder and read everything that we have been able to compile regarding the property. Step 3, tour the property. Typically, we set up 3 tour dates that the listing agent leads. Mm-hmm. And step 4, bid. And that step 4 is one of 3 different auction formats. Mm-hmm. Was that clear?
Yeah, I think that is very clear. We do have a question of what will be your minimum value of a residential property in the Hudson Valley. Well, you are familiar with Hudson Valley. Not everyone really is, but I would say the average price there is about $800,000. So, what would you say that your minimum value of the residential home will be?
I see the question. I think if that property has an audience that's likely from the Metro New York marketplace, we would accept an assignment under $1 million there. Peter, reach out. You can fill out the link that Kate posted a little while back. Maybe she could repost it so it's a little more recently on the feed. And you can just answer a couple of questions, and our auction team will receive that. And if it's a deal that we think we can help and add value on, then we will happily let you know right away.
Well, that is great. I'm so happy to see how many questions we have. It's yes. It means that there is great interest. I was very curious to find out more about auction. That's why I interviewed you, and I'm so happy that you are back at Lunch with Lucy to talk more about it to our audience. And please go to youtube.com/Lucy Edwards VHT. And you can either watch the whole video, which is about half an hour, or you can pick and choose your topics and your segments and in the segment section. So and then I broke them into pieces just so you can understand what they're about, and then you just watch those. So no, it's fantastic. Thank you so much, Misha. And please
My
reach out to
pleasure.
Misha with any questions. We have the form there.
Thank you so much, Lucy and Kate. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're happy to speak to you about any of your listings. If you'd like to discuss, let us know. You can reach out through the way the link that Kate dropped, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Next show for next month is March 15th. We have an exciting show with Laura Monroe and Lockhart Steele. They're both from Inman News. Laura is the global head of community and Lockhart is the chief content officer. So we'll get kind of a behind the scenes look at Inman. So we hope you join us for that.
Yeah, I was just at the Inman a couple of weeks ago. It was fabulous. It just really, what a great show. And the whole story from just about every panelist is back to the basics. And when I interviewed Laura and Lockhart, we were talking about the process, how they find the ambassadors, how they find the speakers, the panelists, how everything is organized, networking events. It's really, really great. And I'm telling you, after listening to them, you are going to register to Inman. I've been coming to New York City Inman for a while, but I am ready to try Las Vegas now. It's a great event.
All right. That's our show for you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Misha.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everybody. See you on March 15th. All the best.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.